Can you hear me properly now? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, and we can see you.
Oh, okay. But at least you hear me.
Yes.
That's important. Okay.
Can everyone please mute?
Oh,
You're probably muted.
I'm trying. Where's the
Mm.
mute?
Bottom of the screen.
Good evening, everybody. I will make it mute.
No, you're gonna move the window.
Hello, Hala.
Top. There you go. And then you can see it.
Okay, I'm ready whenever you are. Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. This webinar will be recorded and a video will be posted later on our YouTube channel. I'm delighted to welcome D.L. Nelson, the critically acclaimed author of Third Culture Kid Mysteries and Triple Decker. Before we start our evening, I'll quickly give a brief history of Arab word books for newcomers joining us today. My name is Amani. 23 years ago in March 1998, I thought the internet would be a great opportunity to pay tribute to the writers who have enriched my life. I created this website called arabworldbooks.com, which is dedicated to enhance understanding between different cultures. I'm also very proud that over the years, it has become a destination for researchers and centers of Arab studies around the globe. Our mission is to highlight the ideas, the books, and the women and men who create them. The core of this website has always been the author bios, their books, as well as their writing. Around the year 2001, we introduced two programs, the Writers' Workshop and the Book Club, both running now for over 20 years. In the Book Club, we featured a mixture of fiction and nonfiction, mainly recent books. Lately, as book clubs have become more prevalent in the Arab world, we have focused on international literary masterpieces like the works of Albert Camus and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Next month, for example, we will be discussing Snow by Orhan Pamuk. We have also introduced a new series of conversations with Arab and international writers. Tonight is our 5th episode of this series titled, excuse me, A Writer, a Vision, a Journey. These in-depth conversations aim to explore the motivation process. Excuse me again. These in-depth conversations aim to explore the motivation process and outcomes of a writer's journey, and hopefully shed some light on the values and experiences that are common to writers and readers across the world. Egyptian author Mohammed Tawfiq will host and moderate the discussion. Thank you all for participating and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Amani. Let me start by introducing D.L. Nelson, my very good friend D.L. Nelson. D.L. Nelson is an American-born Swiss writer who revels in life, personal relationships, history, and modern social issues, and weaves them together in richly detailed novels, short stories, and more recently, nonfiction. She lives in Geneva, Switzerland, and Argelès-sur-mer in France. Nelson's writing has been called engaging, fun to read, richly textured, suspenseful. I can certainly attest to all that, with action that moves at a fast clip. Her novels have been called a Hitchcockian nail-biter, an complete alternative to conventional crime dramas, and compared to Fanny Flagg's Fried Green Tomatoes and Iris Rayner's Darts Beaches. Nelson's Chickpea Lover won first place in the Florida First Coast Literary Festival. She also won a prize in the annual Hemingway Literary Competition. Portions of that manuscript are now part of Murder in Paris. You can find out much more about the author and her books if you visit her website at dlnelsonwriter.com, that's all one word, or read her blogs at theexpatriatewriter.blogspot.com and wisewordsonwriting.com, which was both a newsletter and published in a UK writing magazine. That is no more. I'd like to advise you to actually check out these two blogs. I've been following them for years. And for people who are interested in the crafts of writing, the second one has been very, very useful to me personally. Welcome, DL. It's great to have this opportunity to have a conversation with you. Let me start by asking you, in your blog, you mention that you decided to be a writer at the age of 4.
Yes.
Absolutely fascinating. And now, how did that come about, and why did that simple childish desire motivate you to pursue a lifelong writing career?
Well, I came from a reading family. My mother, my grandmother both read stories to me regularly, and stories would pop up in my mind, and I'd try and write them down. The only problem was I couldn't write, so I'd put squiggles on paper, and then, 2 or 3 days later, I couldn't read them at all. The other thing is that my mother did, we did double stories at night. I might start, there was a little girl who, and she would say, wanted a new dress, and we would go from there and make up stories. When I was 9, I started a school newspaper. I was totally in love with a mystery series about Beverly Gray, which was written for kids, but she was a journalist and a novelist. And it sounds strange. I mean, you're supposed to say this great writer was a motivator. Mine was a teenage series, young adult books. But it continued. I worked for a newspaper at 16 and then went to university, but my kind of took a turn into corporate writing, which can be terribly emotionally unsatisfying. And I kept saying, oh, I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. I want to write fiction. And I finally, my girlfriend, who got so tired of hearing it, said, so what's stopping you? And the answer was me. And I sat down and wrote Heretics and Lover. And that's the book that is excerpted in Murder in Paris.
Your day job for many years was in journalism.
Yes.
You wrote in particular for outlets representing the cooperative movement.
Yes.
This raises the immediate question of how the functional language of journalism has influenced your literary style. And to put it more generally, what is your relationship with language? I mean, it's a question that comes to mind, especially since you've been living in societies whose national language is not English for decades.
Okay, let's take the language first, then I'll go back to the other. I think living in different countries has messed up my language. If you want a pure American English or a pure South African English, I don't have it. Also, I worked in one company where we had South Africans and Australians and Irish and English, and we would have long arguments about something. I would say, I put the tea on the steep, and they would say, no, it went to draw. And then somebody else would say, no, it's brewing. Or we talk about knickers and underpants and so forth. I think it adds to your language in one way. I am not gifted in languages. I'm functional in French. I can do shopping German. I used to be better in another lifetime when I lived there, but it's kind of gone out of my mind. But I find it fascinating. One of the gifts my husband gave me for Christmas was Susie Dance's word perfect, and that isn't the old word processing. She does the etymology of a different word every day. And sometimes I sneak ahead. No, I find language amazing. You can do so much with it. And just twisting a word can twist the whole mood. In my writing, I will often, on say the second, third, or fourth draft, change quite a few of the words in it to make them either stronger or sometimes weaker, or sometimes it can be too strong. I didn't want all that emotion in it. Okay, the other part of your question was, the first part.
The other part was that you've
journalistic.
Yeah.
How did that influence it? It's totally different writing. You write academically, you can write cooperatively, communication like the corporation speak. You can write in different levels of fiction. How many words you chose, how much description. Journalism is harder because you have to stick with the truth. Fiction, you can make it up. And oftentimes, if I was writing journalistic, I say, oh, I wish I could change what he said. I can't. Maybe some journalists do nowadays. There's been talks of that, but I didn't. And I liked working with the cooperative movement, and it was more with financial institutions, cooperative banks, and credit unions. And it was so nice to see a bank where everything went back to their members, and the members could control the board of directors. It went back in terms of reduced interest on loans, increased interest on savings, good products, and services. So.
I'll get back to this.
Okay.
This issue of cooperatives later on, but now I want to pursue a little bit more with you the subject of culture. You were American born, you were a Swiss citizen,
yes,
living in France. You have friendships all over the world, as we can see from the people here. You obviously thrive in cultural diversity. How do you reconcile these different cultural roots in your life and your writing? And another important issue is, what is your relationship with place? I mean, you've lived in different places, you belong to different places. How does all that fit together in D.L. Nelson as a person and D.L. Nelson as a writer?
Once I came to the conclusion, when you live in a different place, it changes you somewhat. You must have found that from your experiences as well. And then I realized I was never going to belong to any place 100% ever again. And the next thing I discovered, there was nothing wrong with that. It kind of, triggered the Third Culture Kid mystery series, because from when you were in Geneva, a lot of the kids you met were not from their parents' home country, and they were never totally part of their parents' country. They were totally of the Geneva country. They were sort of a melange of the two. And then I thought, maybe I should create a character that has this as a problem. And then maybe if I have it going from place to place, I can go visit those places and try and pick up some of the things. Now, if you're on a research trip, like an incel poll, 2 trips there would not as much a chance to merge myself in the culture. Living in Switzerland many years, I dated a wonderful Swiss gentleman for many years. Sorry, Rick, my husband's here, but he knows about it. It taught me the subtleties of the culture. Little things like you go into a room and you shake everybody's hand before you leave. Your eyes meeting when you did a toast, which you don't necessarily do in another country. So I try and pick up the little subtle things that make me not necessarily a part of it, but not of stay away, type things. And I find them fascinating. I find it fascinating. We were discussing time today. You said, the Egyptians aren't always on time, whereas the Swiss are absolutely neurotic about it. And neither is wrong. It's just the way it is. There was a short time I was selling computer services. I would have done anything for a B permit at that point. And I would find, if I was going to see a German client, I would send them tons of information. And when I went in, the appointment would be exactly on time. I would have underlined stuff. And then I'd go to France and he may get there on time. We might have lunch. I would leave one sheet with what I wanted highlighted because he wouldn't have read anything I sent him. And it's fun. That's the only thing. There are some people who go into a culture and want things to change. There was a woman who moved to the country in Switzerland and she wanted the cowbells to stop. That does not go well. You have to accept, and if there's sometimes people can look at me and they say, oh, that's her American background, or that's her being Swiss, So that's how it affected me. But it's good because I can sneak things into my novels too. And hopefully someone who doesn't get to travel might see something in them and maybe either open their mind a little and go, oh, that's interesting.
That's fantastic. I mean, the idea that you choose to write a series of murder novels in different places and take that as an excuse to visit these places and explore them. That's absolutely fantastic. But the question arises: why murder novels? I mean, you could have chosen to write a series of romances, and take them to different places. I mean, why did you choose murder novels in particular?
I wish I could give a very intellectual reason on that. However, my publisher, who did my first 3 books, I was thinking, I've done 3 books pretty much of this type. Maybe I'd just like to try a mystery series. And I wanted to include history because I love history and maybe I can blend them, etc. And then all of a sudden my publisher started publishing only mysteries. So it was a fluke that I kept the publisher, because I suddenly thought, let's do a mystery. Now, that does not go well in any career planning manual.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your writing is indeed quite versatile. I've been reading your work for decades.
That touches me to have you want to read me. I feel the same on you.
Well, thank you for that. But I've noticed that you've written fiction and nonfiction, novels, short stories. I think I remember you tried your hand in poetry.
I think there's about 10 poems I've written over my lifetime. I'm not a poet. I tell people I'm a poe.
Well, that's much more than that's many more poems than I've ever written. I also remember, for example, when you were workshopping parts of Chickpea Lover, and in Geneva, and it's a very funny. It's not very funny. I mean, it's a serious.
No, part of it is funny.
It's a serious, terrible work, but it can also be very funny.
But let me interrupt you for a minute. But I think even when you're in a serious topic, if you add some humor, it makes it realistic. I also think that is in life. If you're in a crisis, if you can find even a teeny thing funny, it gives you strength to cope. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, of course, one of the issues it tackles is sexual harassment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Notice I
of course,
sneak social issues in my books.
yes, yes, of course. And this is something that I really want to discuss with you at length, this issue of social issues. So you dealt with the issue of sexual harassment before, years before the Me Too movement, and it became a trend. But also you dealt with very extremely personal issues in the Cockeyed Nipple Survivals blog.
Yes.
Here, this is a very personal topic. And then you went to another topic that is highly sensitive, which is
Yes.
the issue of abortion, coat hangers and knitting needles. Can you tell us a little bit about the, I mean, for many of us here haven't read the works. Can you tell us a little bit about these works and what each one of them meant to you?
Okay, I've had 2 bouts of cancer and I've been clean for 5 years, which is wonderful. But I was determined, even with the first bout of cancer, that even if I didn't make it, I wanted it to be a meaningful part of my life. And I wanted to get the best I could out of it without ignoring the gravity of the situation. I don't know if you ever had occasion to go to Hoog, the hospital in Geneva. The people there were fantastic all the way through. And again, I tried to pick out the good details. Just like when you're writing a regular book, you pick out the details. When I went in for the surgery on my breast the first time, in the next area, a baby had just been born. And that was so beautiful. Okay. Abortion is a really touchy issue, and I hope I'm not going to upset anyone by it. When I was at a university, one of my co-students bled to death from an abortion, backroom abortion. I knew prior to Roe versus Wade, so many women were faced with the choices of an abortion, a marriage they did not want, and the abortions were backroom, having the kid, because then at that point you couldn't really raise it alone, or women who had 4 or 5 children and couldn't deal with the 4 and 5 that they had. And I just see in the US especially, although it's in other places, the idea of you're killing a baby. And maybe you are. I really don't know when life begins, but I know you're going to kill a lot of women as well, and you're not going to save the fetus. And I believe women should have the choice of a safe abortion. And I've always been an activist. One of the things of not being American anymore is I no longer feel I can call up and harass the congressman, which I used to do regularly on different issues. I didn't know if it did any good, but I slept better at night. It was probably the hardest book I ever wrote because I talked to many women with heartbreaking stories on both ways. I was impressed with, I would say 99% of the women I talked to, the feeling was it was one of the hardest things I ever did, but I had to do it and I'm glad. I looked at the statistics. I found there were groups like the Clergy Counseling Service, which was started by a minister in New York and ended up with 23 chapters of rabbis and ministers in different states. And they turned around and sent women to have safe abortions. And in 4 years, they sent over 450,000 women for abortions. This one group alone, which means even if you make it illegal, you're not going to stop it. You're going to have women with money can go to Canada or wherever there will be a doctor who will make it look legal. And a poor woman may use the coat hangers or the knitting needles. Or go and there was one woman who told me that her abortionist made a pass at her afterwards. There was another one who talked about going to an inner city place, not quite slum, but close, and it was on newspaper. That was the, he just put newspaper on a table and no anesthesia. And we can't go back to that. As a woman, we can't go back to that. It bothered me to a point, and my husband can attest to this, that it took me a while after doing this to write again. I mean, it just took a lot out of me, because it's one thing to make up a story about someone having trouble, but they're not real. And these women I talked to were real. And by the way, one of the things I discovered in my research, in your country, in Egypt, going back to ancient times, women used crocodile dung to abort a baby. Now, I don't know where they got it. But it shows it's gone on through history. And I self-published this book. It's in the States, and we've sent it to every Supreme Court justice. We've sent it to every legislator who tries to create these things. We sent it to every pro-life leader that we could think of. I've had a couple of letters back. One called me Satan. I also I was very lucky to be able to interview Bill Badd, and he was the one who made it legal for unmarried women to get birth control. And, birth control is a much better choice. And there are countries that have great social programs, but they say, the pro-life people, life begins at birth. I mean, life begins at conception and ends at birth, because then they don't want to do anything for the kids as far as food stamps are concerned, as far as daycare, as far as healthcare. So this was very much a social project. It took a lot out of me, because again, it was so real. And there was also a section I talked to adult children of mothers who had abortions and died, and how it affected their life. So it's a horrible situation to be in, and sometimes there's no good solution. Does that answer your question? Probably more than you wanted.
Opens up interesting subjects for further discussion. Now, I'm going to pursue further this issue of your social perspective on life. But before that, I want to mention your latest work, Triple Decker.
Okay.
Which is
next to last, but that's okay.
Okay. Then well, I mean,
I stuck one out after you started talking. Yes. Okay.
So it deals with a family in Boston. It's sort of a family novel, and the question I wanted to ask you is: this a new stage in your literary evolution? How does this novel fit in with the rest of your work?
Okay. As far as the mystery series is concerned, I loved working with Annie. She became like a sister to me. It was almost, we went places together, and I would see some, say, Annie, this has got to go in this chapter. But at the same time, you write a number of them and you want to go somewhere else. By the way, the house on the cover of that book, I lived on the top floor for a while. Well, it was a good picture. Sent it to my designer, because that was the type of house I imagined. Living in Boston for a long, that was my bedroom. I think, can anyone see if I put the little arrow on it? Boston, I lived in Boston. I lived in the area. There is the cultural, you talk about cultural, the Boston Irish Catholic families are a cultural situation. And I don't mean it negatively. I mean, growing up as a child of a New England Yankee, and my mother never discussed my French side, we had Italians in town, and they had sauce and spaghetti, and Irish kids did Irish dances. I didn't think I had a cultural identity until I moved. And then I realized my Saturday night baked beans were just as cultural, except I didn't think, I think somewhere I thought the whole world did it. I wasn't very bright sometimes as a kid, or realized everything around me. I like pursuing relationships. Family relationships could produce thousands and thousands of books every day, not by me, but by writers in general. And how people can react differently to the same situation. The father and mother are very different there. The immigration issue, they have a politician's son, they have a single mother, and bringing them together and having them work, but there is this tremendous amount of love in the family. No matter who says what, the love is there. And I was hoping to bring that out. And then I don't know if you've gotten to it yet, but the Iraqi war comes into it, but I'm not going to ruin it for you if you haven't.
Okay. Now, this is a perfect point to ask you basically about your general outlook on social issues.
Okay, pick an issue.
I mean, you've dealt with many issues in your conversation so far. Let me ask you about the capitalist system. The capitalist system today is under
Broken.
Well, it's under scrutiny. It's
Yes.
under a lot of scrutiny. There's a lot of writing today about whether the capitalist system is the most efficient system for the 21st century or not, whether it is a sustainable system because it's based on consumption and greed and it uses up so much resources, whether it makes people happy. It can make people rich, but whether it can make people happy, and also whether this issue of accumulation of wealth and the rich becoming richer and the poor becoming poorer. How do you see all this? What is your vision on this, and how can we mend the system?
Okay, I believe somewhat in capitalism. Somewhat. I don't believe in out of control capitalism. I believe very strongly in the corporate movement. I don't know if you ever ran into the ICA, the International Cooperative Association in Geneva, but they support corporate entities all over the world. And some of them are huge. I mean, the Vancouver City Credit Union is over $1 billion. The Navy Federal Credit Union is over $1 million. There are insurance companies that have, billions of dollars. So it's not necessarily, like in the hippie stage when 6 people got together and combined groceries and became a co-op. It depends. In Italy, there are sections that have more co-ops than corporations. And when there's out of employment and a crisis, they do better. They survive longer because they'll say, okay, everyone cuts salary starting from the top down. Or maybe we need to do this, but we're trying to save it for all the employees so we still have a good product to offer, whatever it is. And to me, that works more sensibly. The ICA has also found that cooperatives, when they start up, have a higher rate of success than businesses in numbers. I mean, you have huge successful companies like Apple or Facebook or any, you can name hundreds of them, but it's the working together. I had a friend who worked for a co-op, and I can't remember what they did. It was some medical product. And everyone was so dedicated to making it work that when one man smashed up a company car, he was ostracized. You're hurting us all. You know, and he's got his arm in a cast. And he said, I'm sorry, I'll help pay for the car. They were still starting out on that. But I think you get more employment involvement as well. Because let's face it, we spend so much time at work. And it would be nice to care about what we do more than just a paycheck. And not all jobs can be fascinating, but if you think you're contributing to something that makes a good product and everyone on the floor with you will benefit, it's a psychologically better system, in my opinion, which doesn't mean all co-ops are perfect. They aren't, but.
Well, that's certainly something to think about, and personally, we had in Egypt, there was a period in which the government encouraged cooperatives.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's not the case these days. But there was a period when government policy was to deal with issues such as the housing problem through encouraging cooperatives, farming cooperatives, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, we live in an apartment building that was built by a cooperative, by a group of people who came together, and so they could get better prices and so on. So it's a good point, but you see cooperatives as the solution to the capitalist system? So that's, I mean,
the out of control system.
Out of control.
I'm sorry, there's something wrong with Jeff Bezos having 25 bathrooms. Okay. You know, and then his workers don't have health insurance. Now, I don't care if he has 25 bathrooms, if his workers have health insurance. It's got to be a balance. Neither a cooperative or a capital system will work if the people are not honest with it. And people do what's in it for them. You know, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, am I doing it for me without killing or hurting somebody else? Does that make sense to you?
Well, it makes perfect sense to me. It makes perfect sense to me. It remains to see whether anyone has a different point of view in the discussion. Now, I have more questions, but I think I'd rather leave some more of the issues for the discussion.
Okay.
Would you like to read an excerpt before doing so, if you could just introduce the excerpt, where it comes from?
Okay. This is from Murder in Edinburgh, which has become one of my favorite cities. It is absolutely gorgeous. And it's got so many writers there. It is wonderful. Annie is my third culture kid, and she is there. And she has gone undercover in the company where her friend's husband was killed to investigate the company's connection. It's the end of the day. She and another co-worker, Louise, plan to break into the human resources department to investigate. Like the American detective series Columbo, we know who the murderer is. And I'm hoping that when you read it, you wonder, why is this rich woman a serial killer? Going to different cities in the world, killing employees of this company. So that's part of the mystery. We've got a little bit of the answer, only that we know who the killer is. Anyway, let me start. When the end of the day bell rang, the three men in Annie's work area put their papers away before gathering their things and escaping. Louise finished with what she was working on before shutting down her computer and leaving, winking at Annie as she strung the strap of her bag over her shoulder. She waved goodbye. let's see, where am I? I'm sorry. Annie, because she wanted to be the last to leave, continued working. Why are you still here? The boss's voice made her jump. No one had added anything to the idiot's nickname during the day. The staff simply called him Simple Simon, aka Mr. Barry, not Jack. He had his coat and was wrapping a scarf around his scrawny neck. He hovered over her as if he planned to strike her. I wanted a head start on tomorrow's work. It's a bit complicated. You know, we don't pay overtime. Americans expect that. Simple Simon, Mr. Barry, not Jack said. Asshole, she thought. I'm not asking for overtime. Good. Clock out now and then come back if you must. He nodded and left. Annie looked at her watch. The building was eerily silent, but she put her card in the time clock at the entrance to the department. Each department had its own clock. She guessed the company wouldn't want to be responsible for paying an employee for the 5 minutes it took walking from the main entrance to their desks. As you can tell, this isn't a great place to work. As she started down the hall, Louisa stepped out of the doorway. I signed out, left, then came back. We lost
Hold on.
Okay, wait. It's okay. I'm half reading it from here, not from there. Okay. I ducked the cameras. I don't think they show all the way to the floor, so I crawled. Good thing they're too cheap to pay night guards. Smart you, Annie said. They made their way down the corridor. Stick to the walls rather than to the center. A camera might pick us up. They jumped when they heard a noise. 2 women wearing yellow uniforms, one with a ratty blue sweater, pushing a cleaning cart in their direction and away from the HR offices. The non-sweater wearer took a vacuum, or a hoover, as Louise would call it, and rolled it up and down the carpet. Talk about business and lean against the wall, Annie whispered. I'm not sure how many pages are due next week. Louise's tone was slightly louder than conversational. If we don't have too many meetings, that shouldn't be a problem. Did you get the draft I sent you? As soon as I study it, I'll send you my comments, Louise said. When the cleaning women were out of sight, the 2 women turned the corner to enter the HR section of the building. Annie spied a camera pointed at the HR door. The camera is on the upper half of the door. Annie thought even if it only shot the top half, the door opening and closing would be caught on film. Then she saw a second door. It wasn't locked, but a bookcase was pushed against it. Together, they found the strength to push it away. They were in. Annie's feisty.
Fantastic. Very nice. Great. So I think we can open up the discussion. Any comments, any questions to DL?
Please feel free to ask me anything.
What's the next book?
The next book I was working on before I came back up here to the nest. It's called Lexington. When I was a kid and I went to the first battlefield of the American Revolution, there was a gravestone for 2 unknown British soldiers. And I always wanted to know about them. And I wondered about things. Did their families ever know they died? Did they leave a girl? Did they, did they leave a wife? Did they leave kids, etc.? Why were they there in the first place? And I thought about it and thought about it. And I thought about it from the time I was 12. We know I'm a long way from there. So I decided to write a biography, a fake biography of one of the soldiers, and started researching both why people joined the British Army, what happened, how they got over to the States, and looked at the American Revolution more from the English point of view than the American point of view. And I have been incredibly lucky finding people to help me with the information. The American National Park Service, and especially Jim Hollister there, are unbelievable people who just regurgitate in the best possible way information. And if they don't know it, they send me places where I know it, or where they know it, and I can get the answer. So that's why I'm about 60,000 words in it. This is still first draft, and there'll be many, many, many more drafts because, as you know, Sylvia, once we get the book written, we go back and we polish and we polish and we polish and we polish.
Okay, we have a question from Yasmin,
Hello, Yasmin.
and she says, how do you stay motivated to write the novel? And how are you staying connected with the plot and don't get stuck?
I wish I could say I was 100% motivated every day. I live in two beautiful places. In Geneva, I'm a 5-minute walk from the lake, and Argelès is this wonderful little village that you go out to buy bread in the morning and you eat do this person and this person and this person, and before you know it, it's 2 in the afternoon. And then you come back and say, oh, I'm going to do this, and then it's 7 o'clock at night, and you say, oh yeah, I should sit down and do something. That is the non-motivated days. There are other days that I get up and lock myself into the computer. I'm not a good sleeper, and oftentimes I will be awake from, say, like 2 to 4, and say the character James from Lexington will come in and sit on my bed and say, okay, what are you going to do with me today? And I will start writing in my head, and when that happens, I'm even more motivated. I can hardly wait to get up and get to the computer. I can't write things down at night because I really can't read my writing. It isn't just a matter of being sleepy. I just can't read my writing often. That includes grocery lists.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Are any other people on writing books now? I have a question for your audience.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, you said that it's, you write many drafts.
I can't hear you.
You polish many of them. You write by handwriting or you write on computer. And if you write a first draft, it is how can you add this and add some information on the topic and cancel it again, and how many drafts you write to get a full book for edition or for press? Thanks a lot.
Okay. I write on the computer. If I am in the middle of writing something and some idea comes to write in another part of the book, which happens, I will go to the top of the manuscript and write myself a note. Usually when I start each day, I will read what I wrote the day before and do what I call the first polish. Right now, even though I've got 59,000 words, I am going back and doing a second draft of this part. And it's a good thing I did, because I've discovered when you write over time, you may forget a certain detail and you run into continuity problems. And I ran into a couple, like a man went from having 2 sisters to 3 sisters, and somebody went from being tall to short. There are writers who plan everything out in advance. I'm not one of those. In Murder in Caleb's Landing, I got to the last chapter and realized that the one I thought was the murderer wasn't, and had to change it. And then I went back to foreshadow it and realized I had foreshadowed the murderer I changed it to, which totally surprised me. I don't think I'm totally in control of my writing. That may be it, which is where the polishing comes in. That's when I gain the control. You asked me how many, some things may be edited 19 times. Other things may be edited 5. I don't think I've ever handed something over to an editor that was less than 8. And I'm a terrible proofreader, so I have people proof my work.
Yeah, but some writers record the idea when they get to their mind, and some others drawing the persons or the persons in their book or their novel, and drawing the personality and the characters of them. Are you doing this?
I have been known to, when I finish a book, I have a form that sometimes when I was teaching writing seminars, I would have it where you give the person's name and their age and their favorite color and the whole thing, and we'll do that afterwards. I don't know if it still exists, and it's probably very American, but there was a marketing company that had a lifestyle chart that you could fill out to determine the type of character a person was. And at one point, I submitted my characters to that and see if I agreed with what their decision was. But I haven't done that for years, and I don't know if they still exist. If they do, I'll let Mohammed know. I don't think, by the way, there is a right way to write. I think the creative urge comes, like Murder in Caleb's Landing goes back to slave days and the Underground Railroad, where slaves were helped from house to house to get to Canada, where they would be safe and free. And they find, it's very early in the book, they find a skeleton and a slave diary in the basement of the parents' house that my character's parents have inherited. And about halfway through the book, not even halfway, this other character comes in. She's Hungarian, but she's running an underground railroad for abused wives. And I intended for her to come in and have a cup of coffee, make a couple of sentences that I needed, and all of a sudden she becomes a major character in the book. And with the two underground railroads, it's a much more in-depth book. It shows to a certain degree that sometimes people have to escape from horrible situations, whether it's the Civil War, whether it's a regular war, whether it's a pandemic, although how you escape a pandemic, I do not know. Does that answer your question, or would you like me to go further?
No, thank you. Thanks a lot for you.
I'd also like to add here that DL is not only a meticulous writer, she's also a meticulous editor. I know that from experience, because she edited my novel, The Scorpion's Whisper, about 15 years ago. And the novel is about to be released very soon. So, so she's an extremely strict and meticulous writer and an editor. Now we have a comment from Hoda, and then a couple of questions from Yasmin, and then Najla.
Okay. Hello, Hoda.
Hi. Hello. Now, well, my question is about your leading character, Annie. As I was growing up, I loved all sorts of reading. And from the library in my school, the mystery novels I could come up with, as I could lay my hands on, was The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew.
Oh yeah, Nancy Drew, yeah.
And I was kind of biased to Nancy Drew just for the very reason that she's a woman, you know, kind of, okay, so women are powerful too.
But you know, they've republished it and they've made her calmer. They've taken away some of the edge.
Of Nancy Drew?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. Yes, yeah. They thought she was too powerful.
Oh, I liked her.
I
felt
too.
She was powerful enough. Now, my question is, now we are attending the workshop, the writing workshop with Hamad Tawfiq, and we're thinking more like the writing workshops, the writing purpose. Now, when you, in a mystery novel, why do you choose a recurring character? I think this is a theme. And how did you come up with the choice of her being a woman? Did you want her to be empowered the way I felt? Or is she, does she work for readers, both men and women? And how do you choose a recurring character from the beginning? Do you like develop her features as you go from one novel to the other, or how to do that? Sorry, it's many questions in one.
No, well, Annie and I are still good friends, even though I haven't got a book about her in my head at the moment. I wanted to be able to go from place to place, so I made her a contract tech writer. And I made it, and this because this was always my dream, that I could only work part-time and still write. I made it that she could write 6 months. I worked 6 months a year and then write 6 months a year. So that was it. Living in Geneva, I met so many third culture kids. I thought, hey, if she's lived in several countries, she'll be multilingual, which will make her more valuable as a tech writer. This is the process I was going through. I made her love history, so when she went to a different city, not only did she come across a murder, she had something to do, she was researching some history, which is usually connected to the book in some way. A lot of people have said, you're Annie. I'm saying, no, I'm not. First of all, she's tall. Second of all, she's great at languages. Both of us at the time had red hair. Hers was curly. I always wanted curly hair. I think Annie, in a way, was a woman I wanted to be, especially the multilingualism. I mean, the fact that girl learned the languages so fast, I was jealous. I have an Annie Clark, one of my artist friends. We were in Geneva at the Escalade, and there was a woman with long red curly hair, Annie's height, the way I had visualized Annie, giving out free hugs. We took her picture, and Pauline always liked my books, and she was an artist, and she turned around and put a painting of that girl on a clock. So in my bedroom, I have Annie hanging on my wall that tells me the time several times a day. Annie became very, very real to me. And also I developed her from being uncomfortable as a third culture kid to being comfortable, from being very independent to finally marrying a local policeman. I started her off in Argelès, and in fact, the apartment that I am sitting in now is Annie's apartment too. Made description very easy. How many stairs? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That sort of thing. So Annie, as I said, is real to me. Roger was a policeman at 36, which is the big, originally the big police station in Paris, and just met a retired policeman from 36. And I wish he'd been around when I was writing, because I would have written Roger's character differently, because I could have gotten much more real life experience versus just a semi-retired policeman in town.
So putting your character into her is what made her a female, even though that Nancy Drew was, they toned her down. I don't think they toned down the Hardy books. They didn't think they were too strong.
No. You may, listening to me, realize I'm very pro-women. I am not anti-man by any means, because they're half the population, but I wish a lot of times they'd shut up and go away. But they do, especially if they're doing damage to us. And living through the feminist movement in America and trying to be an activist. For example, there was the Equal Rights Amendment, and I worked really near the State House in Boston, and I would go and lobby for it. And I remember one legislator saying to me, "Such a cute little girl, why do you want to? Your husband will take care of you." Now, kicking a legislator is not the way to get him to vote. I said, well, here's the situation. My husband left me. I'm a single woman. I have a child to support. And I really would like a salary that equals what the man in the office is getting for the same work, you know, so you had to do it. So that's, yeah, Annie has never lobbied anyone, however.
Right. The last part, the recurring role. Why do you choose for a mystery novel a recurring? I think this is a trend generally.
I think it was because I really liked her and didn't want to leave her. Sometimes I liked her better than I liked me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking.
Great. Let's take a few questions from the chat first, and then we'll go to Hala.
Okay, let me see. Okay.
We have in the chat, let me see, Yasmin, again, she's saying, should writing be simple or should it depend on the type of book? And then she says, I think writing skills and techniques have nothing to do with the language you use in your writing. Let's see. With the language you use in your writing. I don't know how to get this. Okay, let me read it. I think writing skills and techniques has nothing to do with the language you use in your writing, or it has an influence. I mean, in terms of the courses related to writing are delivered in English, but I would write in Arabic. Want to hear your thoughts on that. Do you have any thoughts on that, DL? Because I'm going to add some of my thoughts on that afterwards.
Okay, good. You can probably do it even more because you are an accomplished writer in 2 languages, and my ability to write in French is a coherent note to the concierge. I wouldn't even begin to try and do a professional writing job, because professional writing and casual writing are 2 different things. I said journalism, academic, corporate writing, fiction writing, and the type of fiction writing are all different in the way you structure the story and the language you use. There are certain things that carry through them all, like to be coherent. My personal preference is simple, not necessarily like in America, the first book we were supposed to learn to read was See Jane Run, Run Jane Run. I'm not talking simple like that, but not to overwrite. For example, my rule is if I'm describing something, I don't want to do more than 3 descriptions of a room, for example, but just enough so a person can visualize it. In journalistic writing, it's a real formula, like the first thing you say has got to be should be the most important. A lot of writers don't do that. Journalists don't do that. And then it goes down in a reverse pyramid. Academic writing seems to be, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it crudely, the more bullshit you put into it, the happier they are. And do you agree?
No.
You wouldn't have done that, Sylvia. I know you wouldn't have, but the one I worked with on my master's wanted it. So
I'd say
you can button, Sylvia. It's okay. You can button. Go ahead.
No, please
okay,
button.
I'll button. No, not on academic writing. Well, not the academic writing I am doing with the people I'm doing now at the university.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was told when I was working at the ITU and I had to write letters, my boss used to say, your letters are all very nice, but you must put some more padding into them because they're too short.
Yeah.
And that I didn't like because it was just waffle. But he thought waffle was good.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it's not just
the variation. Waffle
I
sounds better than bullshit.
Yeah, that's probably the opposite
with
of
academic writing. With academic writing, you take the hand of the person and you lead him along until he then understands what you want to do. And with fiction writing, we want, it's sort of, you're discovering yourself what's going to happen. It's more exciting.
It is.
But Yes, there are different rules. I mean, there's bullshit everywhere. I mean, even in fiction writing.
Can I ask questions about this?
You come in. I just want to say one thing and then you can come in. When I was writing a newsletter for Canadian credit union executives, I used to get all press releases and it would arrive. The company name, a leading producer of, is pleased to announce. If I had 10 press releases, they all started that way. Oftentimes they would put so much in that until the second paragraph, I didn't know what they were talking about. My husband is the editor of 2 magazines and he gets the same thing and it's become a joke. I mean, it's almost like I will go, I am pleased to announce that dinner is ready, you know. Go ahead, what were you going to say? I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Yes, if you are a scholar or a researcher and at the same time writer, did you or are you choosing between one of them, academic writing or literature writing or creative writing, or you can do the two, academic and the creative writing?
I've gone back. I got a master's degree in creative writing from the University of Glamorgan, which was to produce a novel and an academic paper, which I did on repeated symbolism in the works of John Irving. And the academic paper was much harder than the novel because I kept having to put the waffles in, Sylvia. I was also working where I was doing corporate writing at the time. And I was also international correspondent for a credit union trade publication in the States. So I was going from one to the other. And I'm still saying, I think. Does that answer your question? Because you don't sit down and say, oh, I'm going to write academically. And you don't sit down and say, I'm going to write journalistically. My journalism lessons came from when I was working for a newspaper at 16, and I had an editor I was terrified of, but he taught me a lot. You know, where's the story? You know, cut those words. If you want to put that at the end, put it at the end, but it doesn't really, I mean, he was a wonderful teacher on that type of writing. So you kind of just turn your brain around. It's sort of like going from one language to another almost.
Let me just say that Asmahan is, I understand her question because she's an excellent poet, but she's also preparing her PhD, and she's also an expert on papyrus, Arabic papyrus, not hieroglyphic papyrus, but Arabic papyrus. So she's also handling these issues of language in different areas. Now we will be having first of all will be Najla, and then there was Hala, but Hala's it seems she's out now, and then it will be Ria. So yeah, I see you, Ria. I see your hand raised. We'll have first of all Najla, who's put a question some time back, and then Hala, and then it will be your turn. And I want to make a comment to Yasmin. Yasmin, if you're writing in Arabic, you're welcome to join our workshop. We have it on Zoom like we're doing now. So you can apply through Arab World Books. Now,
Najla, do you remember with the Geneva Writers Group, there were people there who wrote in French? There weren't many, but there are a couple of women who would come down from Paris regularly because of not the language, but I guess the structure of the writing. But go ahead.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out to find the Najla's comment because it seems to have disappeared.
Is that Najia Kahil?
Okay. I'm at 8 p.m. at 8 p.m. What's Najla's question?
Should I say it? Okay, Najla question is, did you read to other writers? Did you read to Arabic writers? Thank you.
Did I read to them or read of them?
Did you read for other writers? Did you read, and especially Arab writers?
Okay. I read a great deal, and this sounds like I'm very compulsive, and probably I am. I keep an Excel spreadsheet of the writer, the book, and the number of pages, and when I read it. Part of it is I read so much, and some writers write several books that I can check back and say, I already read that. So far this year, I have read over 12,000 pages. It's fiction, mystery, pop. Every now and then I call it a nincompoopy book, which is a romance, but it makes me feel good. I will read things, history, politics, a whole variety of things. I have to admit, my Arabic writer is Muhammad. If I could get books that I knew were Arabic writers, I would read them. I haven't come across them, but I haven't looked either, I have to admit, but I think I will start to do that. It's nice. It rounds off knowledge. I've not had a lot of experience other than several visits to Damascus, and I was going to set a book in Damascus before the war, but the book would not have worked because of the war. It was going to be set partially in Ebla and partially in Damascus. And Ebla was a site where they came across 17,000 cuneiform letters going back several thousand years before Christ, and I actually got to talk to the man who translated them. And I was all set to go, and the war happened, and but I still would read. I'll read anything, actually, I'm usually, I have to read. I can't not read.
Okay, now we have Hala and then Ria.
Okay,
Hala, go
Hala.
ahead.
Very nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Oh, I like your bookshelf. Don't you love it when they do newscasts and people go, oh, that guy's book. Oh, I wish I could see the title on that. Go ahead.
I have some books in English at Amazon.
Okay. All right, I'll take your name down and look.
Okay. We grew up with Agatha Christie writings and Maurice Leblanc. And
Okay.
I want to ask you, what is the difference between your writing and that of Agatha Christie and Maurice Leblanc? And I have another question after you.
Okay. Funnily enough, France 2, TV station, came here and did a 2-minute segment on me, calling me the Agatha Christie of Argelès. I thought he was overstating it a bit, but I wasn't going to call up and complain. She has character, and going back, she has repeated characters, and she is almost writing of a certain social set, or at least with old Hercules and some of the other characters. I absolutely adore her women characters in it. Good, bad, different, etc. So no, that's no, I wouldn't mind being Agatha Christie though. So, but I look at it, and especially women mystery writers have their own ambiance.
Yeah.
Whether it's Sue Grafton with the alphabet would be an example. Unfortunately, she died right before she wrote Z. She went through the whole alphabet. And I always felt, and I'm hoping people do that with Annie, you get to know the character. When is that romance didn't work? She's changed offices again. I'd like to see how they bring them up to date with technology, going from people writing on index cards to an Excel spreadsheet, going from looking for a phone booth to having a mobile phone. You know, that's an advantage of a recurring character.
Okay. Writing about crime, it exciting the writer before the reader.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
I know, because I feel very exciting with my writing before I publish it or issue.
That's wonderful.
Yes. What your business aim to do, to write a crime literature, or what do you aim to?
What do I aim to?
Yeah.
I aim in anything I write, not just the mysteries, to take a character, hopefully make them so real, challenge them with situations, and hopefully they will survive.
Yeah.
There was one point I wanted to kill off Annie's police lover, and I mentioned it to 2 or 3 people, and they told me, "Don't you dare!" So he had a heart attack instead, you know. But that was a challenge that I would give her. I think it's, again, how do people face situations? My daughter gave me a T-shirt that said, "Be careful or I'll put you in my next novel. I'm a writer." And I don't really put real people in there unless I ask them. Because sometimes they'll tell a story that is so good you want to take a little bit of it, but without mentioning their names. And if I do that, I will show it to them and say, "Is this okay? You're not going to be embarrassed. Are you hidden enough?" or whatever. Do you get Murder, She Wrote over here? Have you all seen that with Angela Lansbury? It was a very popular series about a mystery writer who kept coming across mysteries. And my daughter and I used to watch it every Sunday night with popcorn. And that was still before I started writing. And I said, "Oh, I'd like to be like her." And she said, "You can't be." And I said, "Why not?" She said, well, every one of her relatives gets accused of the crime, and I'm your closest relative, and I don't want to be accused of a crime you come across. And it's still a joke between us many years later. Do you have another question? You look like you're thinking.
Yes. I wrote in one of my short stories that the victim is half a way to killing her. Do you support my opinion? The victim.
The victim, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Cut the halfway to kill herself.
Okay, she's suicidal.
Yeah. No. She.
She's half responsible.
Okay.
She's responsible.
Okay.
More than half the way. Yeah. More than half.
I think you need to finish it and give it to 2 people you trust to read. Because oftentimes, and Sylvia has done this to me more than once, saying you can't do that. And other times saying it does work. So I think you may need to have the whole thing done if you don't mind going through the whole thing. That's my opinion. Because you didn't.
No, maybe I can't express myself well. محمد يعني قول لها ان انا كتبت في قصه من قصصي ان الضحيه بتقطع نص الطريق لقتلها. هل هي بتأيد رأيي ولا لا؟ يعني هي مسؤولة بنسبة 50% أو أكتر عن قتلها.
I think what she's saying is that in one of her published stories, she says that the victim is partly responsible for getting Murdered.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
the
in other
victim
words,
has
drove
made
the
it possible
murderer
for
to
the murderer to kill her
Yeah,
by her actions.
that's an interest. That would be very interesting.
Okay.
I'm going to look over at my husband on that one. Shake your head, yes or no. He went like this. That's a very interesting twist. It's very hard to be original too, because so many things have been written. So if you can't get a good twist, yeah, I like that.
Thank you.
Mohammed, can you give, is that book in English?
Yes, of course. I have many.
Mohammed, could you get the title to me? Because I want it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, we won't take the time now for me to worry about writing it down, etc. Thank
Yes.
you for your question, and thank you for the situation. That's interesting.
Thank you.
Oh,
Okay, Ria wanted some. Ria, you had a comment or question?
is she on, Mike?
Yeah, can you unmute?
Yes, I can.
Hi,
Donna
Rita.
Lane, it's great hearing more about you. I've known you for years. We haven't always been in contact. Now, I'm looking forward to Upper Decker because I lived in Boston, all kinds of places. And I want to know, talk about the Irish and Catholic Irish and other groups. I don't remember completely what your background was as far as you want to spell it out. And I also want to thank you. You were the one who was helping me get ready to talk about the French Huguenots. And I flew all around the world tracing them to get a better view of who they really are. And you encouraged me. I'm grateful. I'm grateful. We were at the Little Prince Cafe.
Yeah, I remember. It's still there. Pre-pandemic.
So I want to know about your family background.
Okay. If I've actually been, I'll do this quickly. My ancestor, Michel Boudreau, sailed from La Rochelle, France in 1640. My mother's family arrived not on the Mayflower, which everybody claims, in 1636 on the Blessing. I was raised in a middle class to upper middle class, very Republican, conservative community outside of Boston, and felt I didn't belong there. And I don't. Very nice people, but it was very close. And in fact, I had coffee last night with a man from Ireland, and he went to Boston at a younger age than I did. And I live 12 miles away.
Oh, really?
Okay, so maybe this adds to my wanderlust and why I love seeing other places.
Yes. You were awake and the people around you were asleep. It's great.
Sometimes. There were still things I could learn from them too,
Yes, exactly.
One of the things I had to do was take golf lessons, which since my new husband is a fanatic golfer, even though I didn't want to take the lessons, it's really handy because I understand what he's talking about. So it wasn't wasted.
Yes.
Nothing you learn is wasted. So, and it's good to see you
were
again.
Your parents the same?
Were
your parents the same religious background and all that stuff?
My father was Catholic. My mother was Protestant. It was a very WASP community, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, with little enclaves of other nationalities.
That's
I don't know.
Great.
I don't know if there was a Huguenot there, but I didn't realize I'd be running into you either. I learned a lot about Huguenots from you, by the way. So thank you. That's one thing about working with someone else's writing, you learn as well.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What, Hamid?
Any other comments or questions? We have about 5 minutes to go.
Can I ask a cheeky question?
Of course, writing mate.
Have you lost any books in your sheets lately?
Oh, shut up. I accidentally, she gave me something to read and I accidentally washed it. She never let me forget it. Oh, so didn't I do something with peach juice on one of your discs too, or was that?
Yes.
You trusted me with anything after that. Now, one of the things I would advise any writer is to have a Sylvia in their life. And the fact that for years we read everything the other one wrote. We cried over our rejections, which were many. There was one night, I don't know if you remember this, we both received rejections, but they were very positive, saying, "You're good writers, we just can't use this, please keep writing." And we went out and had champagne because we got a good rejection. You need,
celebrated, yeah. We celebrated the ups and downs. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so it also helps because a lot of people, when you write, don't understand. Like a lot of people will say, "Well, how much money are you going to make from this?" If you wanted to think of per hour, you owe the universe, you know.
And also we were both pretty blunt with each other, which some people don't like. You know, we came out and said, "No, that doesn't work. No, that's no good." We didn't sort of say, "Oh, that's lovely," you know, all the time.
We did say when it was lovely, though.
Yeah, but
we were very. We didn't want you to take it out.
No, but it was always, "Please, brutal feedback, no holds barred. I need to get this better." And you know, that's a lot of people don't like that way of. But I think when you know each other well, you that's what you're expecting from the other one. You're not expecting.
I agree with you. I mean, I prefer someone to say, "That's fantastic," but if it isn't, it doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't do the work any good. And even as much as I've written, I don't know about you, Sylvia or Mohammed, but I feel I'm still learning. I'm still improving my craft.
Yeah.
Some things come easier now than they used to, but it can always be better. And even after my work is published, I will say, "Oh, I wish I said it that way." You know,
I've just
go ahead.
I'm looking for the magic again because I'm getting so many rejections on my flash fiction where the early stuff was doing really well. And I'm looking for that magic because I'm wondering whether there's too much technique in stuff now. And I got to go back to a very simple way of looking at things and just not thinking about the craft, because I must have already imbibed so much of it. I shouldn't have to worry about it anymore. And it's that magic, that innocent magic I'm looking for again. Have you got that sort of feeling?
Down. It goes ups and downs. As I said, after I did coat hangers, I was wiped out and I was wondering if I would ever be able to write again. What happened is there's a woman here in Argelès. She's got her creative writing degree from Miami, although she's originally from this area. And we started.
I'm sorry, I thought it was somebody coming in who wanted to clean. I've been in hotels and they're always.
Okay.
Well, I think we've had a fantastic discussion this evening where and Wallace appears.
Yeah.
You've dealt with your battery, I can see.
I really enjoyed it. It was so vital, and you know, it was wonderful hearing and seeing you, DL, but seeing everybody. There was a great deal of synergy between the people and a real sincere and kind of stimulating conversation. So I thank everybody. Thank you.
I thank Mohammed for the chance. It was a delight meeting people. Mohammed, when any of these women have a book in English, let me know. And so I will never have to say that you're the only Arabic writer that I read. Or any recommendations you have, I would appreciate. I don't expect you to give me a book list every day, but
we'll make sure you get brush up on your Arabic writing. But I want to thank you, DL. Your talk today was insightful, and it was great fun. I'd like to thank you all for participating. It was a brilliant discussion, and certainly we look forward to participating in these discussions in the future.